Okay, we're back. I do apologise for being a little bit on the late side. For some reason I was really struggling to get my white balance sorted out. I don't know that I've fixed it completely, but this is just sort of part of the process of figuring out your lighting as you're going, right? So I'm just watching the ad. Oh, I can skip this ad. Oh, thank God for that. Oh, that's good news. But yes, okay, so if you're rewatching this, you'll find that the start time is down below. I will, obviously that's if you're rewatching it, the start time is always down below in the description once it's been published by YouTube. As I said, I am apologising for being a little bit on the late side. I really had some technical issues in terms of lighting. It's just, my office was suddenly flooded with too much light and I couldn't adjust it for some reason. Now, I'm going to do my presentation as I normally do, and then once I've done my presentation, I'll open it up to questions and answers and stuff like that. And this is where I will literally show you a sample combat. So if you're wondering if I was going to be just talking about it, no, I do an actual sample combat. Okay, so let's get started while people are jumping into the room. Hi, welcome to HowtoDandD. My name is Fred Wheeler, and today I want to talk about Dungeons & Dragons 5e, and in particular we're doing a mini combat tutorial on the rogue at level 1. Now I can't cover absolutely everything with this particular character at level 1 because I've picked a halfling rogue at level 1. And it's quite a complicated character to play at level 1. There's lots of things going on, so I can't give you every specific ability and feature that you have accessible to you as a class and as a race. I will cover as much as I possibly can with regard to the rogue and their class rather than the halfling's racial features. Okay? Alright, so we're going to run a basic combat where you're going to see some skeletons and a sort of a sewer area. The Rat Fang sewers, I believe, we'll be entering today. And I'm going to cover some of the basics that revolve around the rogue. The rogue is actually probably one of the most requested classes I can think of out of all the classes. That's the one class that people ask the most questions about, and the amount of positive comments I get from people who see videos on my rogue videos, which are really, I do appreciate it. It's nice. I also get a lot of comments which aren't quite so nice, arguing all sorts of different things. So let's have a look at the pre-generated character sheet for a rogue at level 1 for the halfling, which you can find pretty simply. Just go to Dungeons & Dragons 5e, Dungeons & Dragons website, and you will find you can download this particular character sheet at level 1. It is upgradable. You can find it at level 1 right through to level 10. So this is a halfling rogue, basic background stuff, criminal. So you get the ability to basically have a liaison or a loose network of criminals that you can confide in, and you can make some sort of arrangement with your dungeon master with regard to how that's going to work. All of the factions, personality traits, ideals, bonds and flaws I'm not going to go into today. This is about combat. Armor class is 14 with leather armor. I'm not going to be using a shield. It's not multi-classed or anything like that, so you don't need to worry about that sort of stuff. We're going to be going 2-weapon fighting. For those of you who wanted me to do some videos on 2-weapon fighting, it's going to happen. And at level 1, you do not necessarily need to have a feat to do 2-weapon fighting, but there are some drawbacks to using 2-weapon fighting if you do so and you don't have a feat or a class feature that allows you to do it. So, let's keep going. Nimble, halfling nimbleness. Now, this basically says that you can move through a space of any creature that is a size larger than yourself. Now, because you are a halfling and you are small, that means you can move through a medium-sized creature's space, or large, or bigger, which means you can move through pretty much anybody's space when it comes down to combat. So that doesn't mean you won't necessarily have a few hassles regarding that, but it's nice to be able to move through a space no matter how large they are. And being small is one of the benefits. You get to move through anything that's medium size or larger. lucky. Now halflings, you need to remind me, because if we have a dice roll that is an attack roll, an ability check, a skill check is also an ability check, a saving throw, and we roll a 1, we get to re-roll the dice. Okay? We get to re-roll that dice, but we must use the new result. Whatever we roll on that 20-sided dice, we must use the new result. Brave. So we have advantage on saving throws against being frightened. I wouldn't have thought that would be something that halflings are into and would feature from, but or get a feature with. But we're going to go with it anyway. I don't think it'll play too much of a part today. And then we have naturally stealthy. You can attempt to hide even when you are obscured by a creature that is at least one size larger than you. That means you can hide, or attempt to hide, should I say, behind a medium-sized creature because you are small. Now that sounds really, really broken, doesn't it? But I don't think it is, simply because, one, you're playing a halfling, you are playing a rogue, and to be honest, unless you multi-class a rogue into other features, it can hold its own against a single target, but it's a one-hit wonder. It either hits and does really well, or it misses and it sucks. So now, here is the key one that everybody's going to be wondering about. Sneak attack. So once per turn, not round, per turn, that means on your turn or somebody else's turn, you can deal an extra 1d6 damage. That's at level 1. It will increase as you get higher in levels, to one creature that you hit with an attack. Now you have to have advantage on the attack roll. It must be made with a finesse or ranged weapon. And you don't need to have advantage on the attack roll if there is an ally that is within 5 feet of the enemy that you are attacking. Essentially, as long as that's the case, and they can't be incapacitated. If your ally is incapacitated, then they won't help you with getting that sneak attack. So you don't have to have advantage. You can have an ally within 5 feet of your enemy. Now, if you have disadvantage on the attack roll, then you don't get to use your sneak attack, whether there is an ally within 5 feet of your enemy or not. Okay, it's very, very specific. You don't have disadvantage on the attack roll. You can't have disadvantage. So make sure you get rid of that somehow. All right, so let's jump into the screen and play through a basic encounter. Here we go. So this is the Rat Fang sewers, and our little halfling down here is wandering through, exploring, jumping over sewer water and various other floaters that you might find down in a sewer of some kind, venturing away from the party, something that you really shouldn't do if you're smart, but this particular rogue has decided to do that. Now, as you're venturing through the smelly, dirty, dark, dingy sewers that are lying under, say, Waterdeep or Neverwinter or something like that, or some other city, he comes around a corner and he can see a big open pool here. Now this open pool has sort of like a little whirlpool moving around inside. So he goes over to inspect it, and now we could make a perception check at this point. I'm not going to worry about it because it's unimportant. What he does notice is there is a pile of broken crates. You can see what looks like a collection of bones scattered around, and old weaponry. Some of it is rusting, some of it's not. So this is the thing that draws his attention. Now, as soon as he moves over to inspect and actually see what's going on, he's done all of this in a stealthy manner. So in other words, he's been trying to be stealthy and making stealth checks. That's not going to matter if the creature can see you. Just bearing in mind, making a stealth check doesn't really matter if they can see you. You're not going to be hidden from them. And then suddenly what rises up is all these bones sort of collect together and form into a skeletal form, pull a sword out of the rubble. It's wearing what looks like scraps of armor that have been torn and shredded, and this creature stands before the rogue and raises its sword. And that is where we're going to start with our initiative order. Okay, so first off, here's our skeleton, here's our little rogue, And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to roll initiative. I'm going to roll initiative for the rogue because it's nice and simple. It's not very difficult. Just look on the character sheet and it's the dexterity modifier, which is +3. So roll your 20-sided dice. Okay, so I rolled a 6. 6 plus 3, 6 plus 3 for our rogue comes to 9. So we'll put our rogue about, where should we put our rogue? About here, shall we? Rogue. Now, there we go, one rogue. We've got a 9. And the number of hit points that our rogue has, we'll put in a box here. And we have 9 hit points. So not a lot. Hopefully enough to demonstrate what we need to though. Okay, rolled initiative for the rogue. Time to grab a 20-sided dice and roll initiative for the skeleton. I rolled an 18, so that's quite high. And we're going to add that to the dexterity modifier for our skeleton, which is a +2. So 18 plus 2 is 20. So we're definitely going to have the skeleton acting first. Skeleton. Here we go. One skeleton. And that's 20 is the initiative. So when you're ordering initiative, make sure the big numbers at the top, small numbers at the bottom, whoever's got the biggest number goes first. Okay, and there's no surprise involved in here. I don't view this as a situation, although the dungeon master might see it differently. I don't really see it as a situation where you could view that the skeleton has surprise on the rogue. Although you could do that if you wanted to. Now, how many hit points does our skeleton have? Has 13, which is quite a few. I'm not really too worried about it because skeletons have a harder time hitting their target than the rogue will. Anyway, now that we've done that, that's our initiative figured out. We've got our list and we're going to go from there. So grabbing a magnet to indicate where we are in the order, I'm going to place it right here. I'll just drop this down a little bit more so you guys can see a little bit more clearly. It seems a little bit crooked. I don't know why it's as crooked as it is. Probably the angle of the camera. There we go. But you can see pretty much what's going on now. There we go. Right, skeleton acts first. So 20-sided dice. I'm going to grab a 6-sided dice. I'm going to make a short sword attack for my skeleton. And actually, I might just place that over there so you can see that a little bit better. Just move that. Yeah, there we go. That's a bit better. Rolling a dice. I rolled. You might say that's a cocked dice, but I'm just going to leave it insane. It's cool. So roll the 1. Rolling a 1 on an attack roll is always a miss. Automatic miss. Okay. Doesn't matter what I add to it. It's always going to be a miss. So the skeleton makes the sword attack, and the short sword just misses completely. And so we jump down to our rogue. Now our rogue gets to take a turn. Now I haven't pulled out a sword or a dagger, although you might decide that you were moving around the dungeon with your sword out or your dagger out or your short bow out. I'm going to have my little rogue draw the short sword and make an attack. Now because I don't have advantage and because I don't have an ally within 5 feet, I'm not going to get to make my attack with sneak attack damage. It's just going to be a straight normal attack with a short sword. So grab a 20-sided dice, that's our attack roll. Roll that, I'm going to add 5 to whatever I roll on here. So I rolled a 12 plus 5 is 17. 17 is equal to or greater than the armor class of a skeleton, which only has 13. So the hit is there, we connect, and now we make our damage roll with our short sword. So I rolled a 4, I'm going to add that to our damage, which is plus 3. So that's 4 plus 3, that's 7. So the skeleton takes 7 damage. Quite good, that's a good start. And that was out without sneak attack damage. Okay, 13 less 7 should be 6. One skeleton has just been hurt. Okay, so that's pretty much all I can do. I can't really do anything as a bonus action at level 1 with my rogue, so we're going to continue to move along. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add something else to the mix. So I'm going to drop it down again. I'm going to say that somebody has entered the battle late, and that is what's going to happen right now. So they weren't present at the beginning of the encounter, but now somebody decides to show up. And I'm going to say that the cleric has been searching for our rogue and makes an entrance, comes around the corner, and has to use their move and their action to get into contact or into a position to be useful in some way. So instead of choosing to cast a spell, our cleric is going to move, use the action to dash, and get into 5 feet with the skeleton with their hammer out. Now the reason for doing this is to allow us to set up and use our sneak attack damage with our rogue. Makes it easy for me to demonstrate then, doesn't it? Okay, so I'm going to just add our cleric in at the bottom there. Often when a new monster or character enters combat, I won't have them roll initiative. I will just add them to the bottom of the initiative. This is just how I do it. You do not have to do it that way. So 1 cleric. There we go. Cleric. And I'm not even going to mark the initiative. It doesn't matter. We can mark hit points here if we want. But truthfully, right now, I don't think it's going to matter at all. So we're going to leave that for now. Hopefully I don't have to pull that into play. Okay, so cleric shows up. Moving on, back to the skeleton. So the skeleton gets to make an attack. As before, 20-sided dice. Roll your dice. And, man, I feel like that's considered cocked. No, it's not cocked. It's a 17. It's a 17. Roll a 17. Add my attack modifier for the short sword, and that's a 4, so that's 21 to hit. Okay, so that's going to definitely hit the armor class of our rogue. Now, our rogue has an armor class of 14, if you remember. You have to get equal to or greater than to hit your target, which we have. Roll the damage, so that's a 6-sided dice. And I've rolled a 4. Add my damage modifier, which is 2, so 4 plus 2 is 6. So our rogue is going to take the attack and takes 6 points of damage. So now has a grand total of only 3. So 9 less 6 is 3. Okay, so things are moving on. Skeleton doesn't do anything else, nothing else happens, and we move to the rogue. Now our rogue gets to act. It changes things now. What I can do is I can also, as an interaction, draw out my dagger. So I have a short sword in one hand and a dagger in the other hand. I also have an ally within 5 feet of my target, which means I get to have sneak attack once with one of the attacks. I do not have to declare that I am using a sneak attack with the weapon. I can just do that at the end. If I hit the target, I can sneak attack. It's really, really simple. Okay, so let's make our first attack with the rogue. I'm going to use the short sword. Using my action with my short sword, I make an attack. I rolled a 6, and I'm going to add 5 to that. So 6 plus 5 is 11. 11 isn't equal to or greater than the armor class of our skeleton. Now, because it didn't hit, I don't get to do any damage. But it does still mean, even though I attempted to make an attack with my action, I can use my bonus action now because I have 2 weapons, a short sword and a dagger. I can use the dagger to make a bonus attack with that bonus action. So I'm going to do that now. It's exactly the same as the stats for your normal dagger attack. The only difference is going to be the damage. So I rolled I believe that's a 14. And I'm going to add 5 to that, so 14 plus 5 is 19. 19 is equal to or greater than the armor class of our skeleton. And so therefore we're going to roll some damage. Now, because I've actually hit the target, which is good, I can now choose to use my 6-sided dice or sneak attack damage with the dagger. Because the dagger only does a 4-sided dice worth of damage, it's only a 4-sided dice. Now, when you don't have a class feature or a feat or something that gives you 2-weapon fighting, specifically the ability to do that, normally the process is you get to roll your damage dice, but you do not get to add your damage modifier. And that's what happens with 2-weapon fighting when you use that bonus action. And this is only when you don't have any feats or class features that gives you the ability to do 2-weapon fighting. Any class can do it as long as the weapons are finesse weapons, and both of these are finesse weapons. Okay, so I'm going to roll 4-sided dice, no damage modifier, and I'm going to add my sneak attack because I've got an ally who's nice and close. So I roll those dice and add them together. I rolled a 1 for my sneak attack, and I rolled a 3 for my dagger. So that's a grand total of 4 piercing damage. Now for those of you who are wondering what sort of damage does sneak attack do, it does whatever damage the weapon does. So if it does piercing damage, then you're doing piercing damage with your sneak attack. If you're doing bludgeoning damage with your weapon, then it would be bludgeoning damage. If you're doing slashing damage, then it's going to be slashing damage. Okay? It's very, very simple. It's not hard to understand. I know a few people ask that question from time to time. So 4 points of damage on our skeleton with our sneak attack. So 6 less 4 down to 2 now. Alright, things are progressing nicely. I've done everything I possibly can in that turn with my rogue. I only get to, even if I attacked with both attacks, I wouldn't get to have my sneak attack added to both the short sword and the dagger. You only get to do it once per turn, remember? That does mean if you have a reaction, such an opportunity attack, you could take that opportunity to use your sneak attack again, provided you can hit the target. You either have advantage or you have an ally within 5 feet who isn't incapacitated. We're going to go down to our cleric. Our cleric is going to be nice and useful. And we're going to grab a 8-sided dice and we're going to cast Cure Wounds on the rogue before the rogue winds up going down. So I'm going to roll 8-sided dice and I'm going to add 3 because I'm using the basic cleric from the Dungeons and Dragons starter set. In this case, I always usually do. So 8 plus 3 is 11. So I'm going to get all of my hit points back for our rogue. Can't have more than my maximum. My maximum's 9. So we're back to 9 hit points. It's good news. Here we go. Alright, cleric's taken their turn. Now, the cleric can, if they want, position themselves in a different location if they wanted to, but it's unnecessary. There's nothing else going on. So we'll go back to the top, back to the skeleton. Skeleton takes their turn. Roll a 20-sided dice. I rolled a 3. That's plus 4 for the attack modifier. It's only, ooh, it's not very good. It's only a 7. 7 isn't going to hit the rogue or the cleric. I'm going to stick with the rogue since the rogue has been doing all of the attacks on the skeleton anyway. Our skeleton doesn't seem to be getting a good deal today. He's outnumbered anyway. Skeletons don't generally run away either. They're undead sort of things. They just do whatever they were programmed to do, or they just attack their living. Okay, let's move over to the rogue. It's the rogue's turn. Now remember, I can do my 2-weapon fighting. That's use my action to make a short sword attack. Pardon me. Use my bonus action to make a dagger attack. And I can apply my sneak attack to either one of those rolls, provided they hit the target. Okay, so let's do that now. So let's start off with the short sword. Must make the short sword attack first. You can't just go straight for the bonus attack with your bonus action. Okay, you must make an attack action with your action. So I roll a 12 and add 5 to that. That's the attack modifier. That's a 17. 17 is equal to or greater than the armor class of the skeleton, so I hit. I'm going to apply my sneak attack damage with my short sword. So my short sword is a 6-sided dice plus the modifier because it's my normal attack action, and my bonus action is the black dice, the 6-sided dice. Okay, so we roll these dice. Okay, so we got a 1 on our short sword, and I add 3 to that, so that's 1 plus 3 is 4, and then I get sneak attack of 4, so that's 8 in total. So that's enough to take the skeleton out. Now you can choose to knock it out or kill it. I think it's a skeleton. Let's just dispose of this thing. We don't need it to be rocking around any longer than that. Now, if there was anything else I wanted to do, so if there was more enemies or creatures around that I wanted to actually attack, I could. I'm going to add one in right now, just because I can. One steps up, flies together, and attacks straight away. Now, what you can do is you still have a bonus action. That means you still have that dagger in your hand. So you roll an attack with that. I rolled a 13, add my 5, which is 18, and that's going to hit. So that's equal to or greater than the armor class of the skeleton. Using my bonus action and my dagger to make that attack, I now get to do some damage. Now I can't add sneak attack for this attack. Even though I have an ally within 5 feet, I don't have advantage. I still have an ally within 5 feet, but this turn I've already used my sneak attack. so I can't apply it to another attack roll that does damage. So I don't get to do it again. So it's only going to be the 4-sided dice. Now normally you would be able to add your attack modifier, which is +3 with the dagger. But because I'm 2-weapon fighting, and as I said, it's not a class feature for 2-weapon fighting for me. It's not a feat that I've picked up. I'm just doing it, I guess, essentially untrained, you might say. I'm only going to get to roll that dice. So no sneak attack damage and no bonus or benefit added to that dice roll. Whatever I roll on the dice, that's what I get. So I get a 3. So I'm going to add in a new skeleton here. Hit 13 and deduct 3. Okay. So as you can see, the concept of using your sneak attack and applying things like damage to that is pretty simple, really. As long as you remember, I need to have an ally within 5 feet. I can't have disadvantage on my attack roll, and as long as I have advantage, either one of those, okay, so can't have disadvantage on the attack, I can have either an ally within 5 feet who is attacking the same enemy, essentially, or I have advantage on the attack, then I get my sneak attack damage. I can only apply my black dice, my sneak attack damage, once to one of my attacks on my turn. And that's it. Okay, so we've done that. I'm going to move around to the Cleric. Now the Cleric is going to make take this opportunity to give advantage to whoever makes another attack on this skeleton. Okay, so I'm applying what's called the help action in combat against this skeleton, should it do anything. And it might do something, it might not. It's really up to you. Okay, that's pretty much it. I don't want to roll through the entire combat because it would take forever, and I think I've covered everything that I needed to with regard to the basics in terms of sneak attack damage, how to make attacks using 2-weapon fighting when you're not trained, and you know, making attack rolls, doing damage, using the help action, maneuvering around, a little bit of maneuvering, not a lot, but a little bit. So that's pretty much it. So now this is your opportunity to share and like the video if you like this sort of content. I do appreciate it when people do that. If you like this sort of thing, I do this once a week, so consider subscribing to my channel and hitting the bell button to be notified when I go live and when I publish new videos, which I do. I have no Patreon. I know people have been asking me to do a Patreon. I prefer people to just go and watch the videos that I have made rather than me start up a Patreon page, but I do have affiliate links down in the description to the book depository and Amazon where you can buy stuff online. I get a small commission. You pay exactly the same price. Just go through the link, buy what you want. You do not have to buy the thing I've linked to. And now this is your opportunity to ask questions in the live chat and to give feedback and say hi to me. I always say hi to people if I possibly can. If you're not part of the live stream, that is what the comments section is all about. Give me some feedback, give me some questions, and I will try to work through those as best I can. And that's pretty much it. And so I'm going to say, till next time, keep rolling those 20s. Here it is. Okay, don't go away. My voice is going to crack on me any moment, so I do apologize. I hope that it was relatively clear. I know that sometimes it's a little bit confusing, particularly if you're doing something like 2-weapon fighting untrained, and you're also using sneak attack, and you've got a rogue involved. It should be relatively simple compared to casting spells, but it can be a bit confusing. Okay, so what do we got here? The Rumour Rat. Hi, the Rumour Rat. How's it going? The Rumour Rat. Omar. Hi, how's it going, Omar? Hopefully this was helpful to you. Light Holt. No, that's Light. I can't see what that letter is. Those 2 letters? Is it 1 letter or 2 letters? How's it going, Light? Awesome. Does he have one for warlocks and sorcerers? I have done a mini combat tutorial for level 1 warlocks. Yes, I'm pretty sure you will find I have done the warlock. Have I done the sorcerer? No, I haven't done the sorcerer, but I do have lots of videos on the sorcerer, and I will probably wind up doing the sorcerer at some point. Anyway, how's it going, Tommy? Simpi, is it Simpi One Deed? Hey, you're new? Was this helpful to you? Let me know. I would really appreciate to know if it was helpful or it made it more confusing. The problem with not separating something like 2-weapon fighting in a video and sneak attack is it can get very, very confusing. There's a lot going on all at once, which is why I'm more tempted in the future as I progress with this series to start separating things out so that it's a little bit clearer rather than combining things all at once. But when I saw this, I thought, well, I constantly get questions about 2-weapon fighting, and so therefore it can get very, very confusing for people. Sneak attack I have a video on already, which is nice and short for people, so that's always helpful, right, if it's nice and short. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up the screen. I'm going to ditch all of this stuff here that I've written on my whiteboard, and I'm going to sort of break down 2-weapon fighting and make it as simple as I possibly can. So we're going to think of it in terms of action and bonus action. So action and then bonus. Now when I say bonus action, a bonus action is not the same as an action. It's actually a totally different type of action. Now I know that sounds weird, but what's going on here is they used poor wording when they created Dungeons & Dragons 5e, and one of the things that they did badly was they used the concept of the bonus action, which if they just called it something else, it would have been a lot easier for people to understand. So here it is. Now what's happening with your 2-weapon fighting? To do 2-weapon fighting, you need to have 2 weapons in your hand. Now when you saw me run through this at the very beginning of the combat, I had nothing in my hand. I took out a short sword. Taking out the short sword now means that if I take out a dagger in the same turn, it's going to also use up my action. I get 1 interaction, which I can do for free. Yep, I get 1 interaction, but I don't get any more than that. So I pulled out a short sword, and my short sword is going to be used for my action. Okay, short sword. There we go. Now my attack roll is as normal. Nothing changes with that with 2-weapon fighting. And the damage coming off this doesn't change either. It's just going to be a 1d6 plus 3. A 6-sided dice. That's one of these things with 6 sides on it. The turn rolls round and I used my interaction again, because I have one, to pull out the other weapon I want to use, which is my dagger, which is a finesse weapon. Now I can use it in melee, I can throw it, but there's no point throwing it if it's right in front of you. You might as well stab it, right? So that is the dagger. 1 dagger. Hopefully this is actually coming out. My pen is either running out of ink. I think it is running out of ink. Okay. Now with 2-weapon fighting, you don't get to add the bonus in for the damage. Normally the bonus will be plus 3, just like the short sword. But because I'm not trained in 2-weapon fighting, I only get a 4-sided dice. It's a 4-sided dice. That's it. Nothing else. Just that sucker there. Okay? So that's how it works. If I was trained in 2-weapon fighting, I would get to add that plus 3. But if I'm not, and this halfling rogue is not, then I don't. Anybody can attempt to do 2-weapon fighting provided they use finesse weapons. Okay? That's the basic gist of it. And they also need to be light. So light weapons are the key factor for 2-weapon fighting. Okay, so when I'm applying something like sneak attack, I can apply it to either one of these attacks as long as they hit, whether it be the short sword attack or the dagger attack. I don't have to stipulate in advance which one it's going to be. I can just do it. I know some dungeon masters work a little bit differently. Okay, so either short sword, sneak attack, provided I have an ally within 5 feet of my target, my enemy, or I have advantage on the attack. And it can be either one of those attacks. Okay, pretty simple, nothing too much to it. Now, with regard to everything else, I know a lot of people will be saying, look, I think that the way that sneak attack damage works is broken, but you only really get one attack as a rogue. And if you use 2-weapon fighting, you're going to get 2 attacks. So it makes a lot of sense as a rogue to engage in 2-weapon fighting if you possibly can, so that you get 2 attacks to increase your chance of being able to use your sneak attack damage. And as you level up, obviously the number of dice you get to roll for sneak attack is going to increase. So the advantage is greater. But unlike a lot of other classes, it's still essentially, you're only really getting 2 attacks. Whereas something like a caster can cast area effect spells that affect more than one target. And fighters get so many attacks it's not funny. Paladins, the Paladin's smite ability does truckloads more damage than any rogue will ever do, as long as you use a high enough slot. Yeah, double your pleasure, double your fun, 2-weapon fighting, which is why so many people who play rogues opt to use 2-weapon fighting, so that they will at least get their sneak attack damage on one of the attacks, because it's a bit of a bummer if you don't get a hit. If you don't get a hit, you do no damage. So it's a no-brainer to go with 2-weapon fighting. I do understand that. Okay, all right, I'm going to leave it there. I can see there's a few more people jumping into the room, but this video is pretty much done and dusted. You'll find that YouTube will publish it pretty shortly, and I will update all the metadata in it as soon as I possibly can. Okay, and what's happening tomorrow? Tomorrow is the Lost Mine of Phandelver Dungeon Master Guide, or DM Guide. We're going to be doing Agatha the Banshee. And if you are in here and playing the Lost Mine of Phandelver, I'm saying nothing more other than it's going to be fun when you finally get to play that part of the adventure. But the video is for Dungeon Masters. Nick, you are welcome. I'm glad you found it useful in some way. And yeah, that's it. We are done for today.